everyone, welcome back to our second Ask Me Anything event in this series. In our last session, we focused on context, who we are, why these collaborations came together, the thinking behind the recent structural changes, and much more. Today, we'll be shifting gears towards strategy and execution. So we'll touch on how Unibright is positioned in the current market, what's coming next for Unibright One, how UBT fits into the bigger picture, and much more. This AMA, just like the last one, is not about token price, roadmaps, or product announcements. It's about understanding how the pieces fit together, strategically, operationally, and philosophically. As a reminder, my name is Zoe. I'll be here to guide the conversation, keep it focused, and make sure we touch on the key themes that came up from the pre-submitted community questions. So let's start by zooming out a little bit and looking at the broader landscape that Unibright operates in. How could the current crypto market environment be described? Many are still calling it a quote-unquote crypto winter. Does this create challenges, or on the contrary, does it actually strengthen Unibright's strategic position?
Hello from my side. Great to be back again. I think that's a great question. First of all, I think it's like cycles happening all the time, especially in emerging technologies. So we've seen this before after our ICO in 2018. And I think these winters, how they are called sometimes, crypto winters, are very helpful and very much needed because you see all this speculative capital leaving the market and let's say unsustainable or even fraudulent token models disappearing. I tend to see these things like some cleansing forest fire, if you're looking for an analogy here. And it's not bound to crypto alone. I mean, I've seen this in, I don't know, biotech or renewable energy, all of these cycles you see happening. And for us, it's just like always, working hard, showing tenacity, and then in the end, it will work out perfectly. And so the bottom line for me is that we really need these cycles to get out of them much stronger than we got into them.
The crypto industry seems to move through regular cycles of hype and cool down. Do you see these boom and bust phases as unavoidable, or how does Unibright position itself to remain relevant across them?
I would consider the technology cycles perhaps separated from the price cycles in crypto market. I mean, the technology itself moves forward fast enough. When you're working on something or positioning your company somewhere in this space, you have to deal with your very own cycles anyway, like adoption-wise or feature-wise or perhaps competition-wise. And in terms of that, I would totally agree with Marten that these crypto price cycles are A, totally normal, B, they also have some good effects on like cleansing the market and showing who's still there. And a side effect for me from a developer perspective is that I had the feeling that always in those winter times, the development side on Unibright was the strongest because the whole space is not so loud and you can actually focus on bringing the platform that we're building on forward, which is always better than to do it like stressed out because you think you have to announce something or release something right away because you're in the middle of a hype cycle.
Yeah, I think that is really important. It's a bit like on the stock exchange market, of course. If you're a big company and you always have to watch your stock price, you get very kind of nervous about things going up or down. But the overall cycles of the overall market right now are not really too important to us. For us, the internal things are important, like developing and delivering. And then, well, there's going to be a new crypto summer or whatever you call it. So a new uprise again, and the winter right now does not really.
Yeah. And just what crossed my mind is when I think about the adoption, or especially enterprise adoption, we saw it mostly not in the hyped times, but more when there is a more settled view to things, then we see companies moving forward. And of course, we are not giving investment advices, but when I look at my personal way of investing or so, I'm more on the contrarian side. So I like things being at a discount and not being hyped up, especially when things have value. And then I like to see a discount. I like to buy my running shoes when they are cheaper priced and not when they are super expensive. So Yeah, it's a philosophical thing.
Looking ahead, how do you expect the broader macroeconomic, regulatory, and enterprise environment to shape Unibright's work over the next 12 to 24 months?
Yeah, I mean, we touched this last time. I think we figured out that there's a lot of things going on in the regulatory environment, especially in the European Union. We have the AI Act, we have the Digital Product Passport coming, and there's really pressure on the companies to do something which is really great for us. Now offering, let's say, some infrastructure solution for proving business processes or just something. It's much better now than a few years ago because there is regulatory pressure, which is great for us.
And if I look at it from my little bubble on the audio side, you have to make sure where the rights come from. So it's about provenance. It's also about where there's now with AI, of course, there's new digital assets being created all over the place. So you need to make sure that you understand what comes from where, what has been used to create new stuff. And this is only a very small kind of portion of all this because this is only about media and digital assets. But if you look at what Marten just said, the really big topics are, of course, on the legal side, they're on supply chain side. There's so many points where provenance is important to be able to prove it. Tamper safe, I think that is basically what's going to happen. And from my perspective, I also see it as a big advantage that we are in Europe, which means there's more security on the data side. We have better safety or better security in terms of personal data and all this. So we personally think that it's a good thing that we're not a US company, but a European company.
Yeah.
Yes, and I'd also like to add that I have the feeling that the gap between the innovation that we always brought or also other companies in our space brought is getting a little bit closer to what's actually needed. So in the beginning of Unibright, we were just way far ahead from what's not only adopted, but what's even known or accepted as common truth of technology. So it was always that very new thing of, for example, blockchain technology. And now as the technological cycles, they get faster and faster. So there is a regulatory, but also a practical demand to keep up with that pace. And of course, platforms or technologies that somehow work on that automated level, they have an advantage here. And it's not only that you have to sell technology for the sake of the technology, but really to meet the regulatory demands. And that's something where we get closer and closer to the actual demands of the market or the industry. And that makes it easier for us to position our technology and our products in the world.
Yeah.
And one more thing about the cycles we just talked about. One thing I personally noticed in my discussions with potential clients or people we do first pilots with or whatever, is that the whole blockchain topic is easier to adopt now for people. They accept it in a different way. In the last big hype, it was blockchain was equal to crypto, and crypto is very, kind of, wouldn't say shady, but it's at least special. And it was all intertwined. Now it's different. Blockchain as a technology is established. People know that it has, real use cases, and that it's not just some fake or scam, that it's on the technology side, it's really an ecosystem that works and can deliver advantages. Doesn't mean that it's always needed, but there are things that blockchain is really good for. And it has been separated from the whole crypto thing, which can be difficult for big corporations because they obviously want to stay away from anything that may look strange. And you don't need to explain to people anymore why we're using blockchain and what it exactly does. That is something that makes things much easier, especially in the first discussions.
Yeah, that's totally right and totally important. Blockchain today or decentralized technologies are seen as a viable solution to building an infrastructure that is able to prove things like a proof of execution. And this is, as you said, much easier to sell than it was a few years ago. Enterprises see it as one possible solution to their problems. And just talking about hypes, I was looking through the questions and I'm still waiting for all the AI questions, and they are not there yet. But just as a hint, of course, we are looking very much into the AI space as well. And AI provenance, as Pierre pointed out, is just one use case. There are more, and we are thinking about an infrastructure solution that has these use cases in mind as well.
Stepping back from all the individual use cases, what's the core problem Unibright aims to solve at its foundation?
Our core is building an infrastructure layer that is able to handle proofs and synchronize data between enterprises and show that data can be trusted. So it's all about the trust layer, and the trust layer is needed, as I just said, very much in the AI space, when you even think about AI agents or models being trained or inference being done from models, just proving what data has been used to train, to infer from a model. We see it in the regulatory things we just touched, like in product passport. It's so much about proving something. All these things come down for me to a proof of execution layer.
Yes, I also think that from the positioning of Unibright, we will always focus towards enterprises. So it was always an enterprise project, not so much a project where you have solutions that are directly connected to an end consumer. So it's more the B2B side thing. And that's something where actually the pace that I mentioned before with the innovation going on in the AI space, I mean, it's something that's very obvious for us on a daily basis when we look at the audio side of things. But of course, not only there. But that's perhaps why it's so present for us. And it's also coming into the enterprise world way more. It's not about end users only using chatbots. It's really about a new structure of enterprises training agents to do work that perhaps a human department did alone before, and now they do it with AI help. Some of the tasks can completely be delegated to AI agents or will be delegated to AI agents in the future. And all this needs a backbone on platform level, on software level, and it also needs a backbone on regulatory level so that you actually, as a human being living in this world, still know what all this technology is doing or executing for you, naming the proof of execution. So that's where we are very well positioned, because it's still, and it always has been, an enterprise B2B thing. And there are just new tasks on that level coming up every day.
Yeah, so it's still what we were envisioning with Base Ledger and Unibright One. This is very much the foundation, but we're building it on a much broader level now. And are happy to move forward with it this year.
That's a good look at what's happening right now and gives us a strong sense of the bigger picture. Now, let's turn to something more concrete, what people can actually expect to see from Unibright One. So in practical terms, what technical or product milestones for Unibright One should the community expect over roughly the next 3 months?
I mean, it's not so much about Unibright One, but Unibright One and Base Ledger and all the things we have built the last years, we are bringing them together in a new solution, in a broader infrastructure solution that can cope with the AI use cases as well. That's a very generic take on it. That's what is already being built, and we will start showcasing and talking about this this year moving forward.
And I think that's the one important thing, that it's not about I would say, more abstract technology that people can adapt to and, then use it to create their own use cases or do their own software. Stefan, Marten noticed in the past that it's also necessary to add a hands-on layer to this, which is real software that enterprises can use. So it's an enterprise solution software or enterprise software solution, that's the whole thing, that have real use cases. That's also one of the reasons that we are involved as Audiogroup, because we are just, the first guinea pig, but we are a real company doing real business. And then from then on, we can spread to broader use cases, first to our clients, of course, but then to even broader audiences. But it's always based on a piece of software that is being integrated in the enterprise, solving real problems. And then the whole proof of execution blockchain layer that is there to prove things is an important portion of it. But it's not the only thing, because only having that does not really solve any problem on the enterprise side. They need also the ecosystem around it to be able to use the whole blockchain thing.
Yeah, and given the 3 month timeline from the question, I would not focus too much on on announcement roadmap here. I mean, it was one idea of these monthly AMAs that we're a little bit closer to what we're actually developing, also in terms of talking about what we're developing. But right now we have the feeling that it's better, as always, to have one or more, two more steps ahead to be able to explain and show what we are working on than just to announce it. So for the next 3 months, I would just state that we will give regular updates within this format and with the blogs that we are writing around these AMAs.
So next I'd like to look at how UBT fits into this framework, especially in light of how it was originally described. So how does the current implementation of your systems align with earlier ICO era statements that positioned UBT as the fuel for all framework transactions?
I think we're totally aligned on that. It was always the idea and what we really set into place then, that UBT is the utility. It's a token that can be used to use the infrastructure that we build. And that is exactly what we are doing moving forward, having UBT as a utility to use a proof of execution infrastructure or using it for base ledger or Unibright 1. It stays the way it was meant to be.
You know, I think I can add to that with my feeling that the current platform ideas that we have and the concept goes more again into the direction of the initially token utility that we also announced during the ICO, being a credit system, so you use an actual software platform. I think with Base Ledger, it's totally clear that UBT always was the one underlying token that makes Base Ledger possible. So we also took UBT very much into the infrastructure level there. Unibright 1 had a small little difference for some time. I want to name that because Pierre also brought it up. During that time, it was very hard to sell blockchain technology just with using the word blockchain, because it was a real downside of things when talking on enterprise level, on consulting level. So that was the one point in time of Unibright where we decided to make it way easier to hide the token concept. When you use Unibright 1, you were able to pay purely in fiat. And of course, our idea was that in the back end, this turns to transactions for Base Ledger, which also uses UBT, but it could also end up in transactions that were paid in fiat and end up on a different blockchain. That's, of course, not the main idea of UBT or the token. It was just a small phase in that adoption cycle, let's say, where it was very hard to just use the word blockchain. Now it's a different time, different regulatory demands, higher pace in adoption needs due to innovation. And now it's way easier to put the advantages of a token model into the front again, because it's just very good if you build a decentralized system and you have an underlying decentralized and trustful token model established for years now, which makes us OGs in the blockchain enterprise space. So of course now it's just a better situation or better place to argue for a token than to argue against it.
Yeah, and of course, we may not forget that it's not only the token being just another currency for the companies to pay for our products, but we need it very much for having this incentivized ecosystem. And very much with the new infrastructure or product we are building, we want to make it much more open so that other players are incentivized to build within it, to engage in it. And we strongly believe that is best done with a token, like we see it in other ecosystems like the Ethereum ecosystem or the Bitcoin ecosystem. The power a token can give to an ecosystem is really huge, and that leverages us. It gives us much more power than just being a centralized, medium-sized company. So we see much more power coming out of it.
I think that naturally leads to a very common question: how tokens and fiat payments interact in real enterprise setups. Will there be situations where enterprise customers pay purely in fiat with no UBT involved at all behind the scenes?
Yeah, I made that example that there were cases in the let's put proof on whatever blockchain and open this use case to companies. So there we had some of these cases, but in the platform we're building right now, UBT is the central part. I think we should, when we talk about the technology and talk about the use cases, we will also focus on a dedicated token model chapter again, like in the early days. because there are also components where we not just take tokens, but partially burn them, bring them back into the cycle for incentivization of other players, just as Marten said. So I think for the things upcoming, we can clearly state that it's not possible to use the systems without the usage of UBT. We will still build bridges for enterprises to make it easy for them to get their UBT, and if it's done behind the actual payment of whatever payment system, then we can do it, but it should always be in favor of UBT. So if somebody wants to pay in fiat, he will definitely have to pay more than if he pays in UBT at that very point in time. If he decides to stay off the UBT world, he will have an extra thing to pay, and that's good for the complete community and for the system.
Yeah, I think that's still important from the the last cycle we learned. Even though times are better, you should never scare away a customer. It should always be all in favor of UBT first, but also from a customer perspective, it should be as easy as possible. And if we then do the solution behind the scenes, that's fine.
Yeah, and let's just keep in mind, we still have these companies that move slower or are still unable to have crypto tokens in their books or do the accounting right. Not so much the case anymore, but still there are some, and we have to help them as well.
And I think, Marten, perhaps a very German way of seeing it, but if I look at the big companies and also all the regulatory things, or governmental things, it's so extremely slow to move into them and to work with them first off, but then also, even if you work with them, to then go to their finance department or whoever and tell them, yeah, there's this blockchain thing and here's your wallet and whatever. I mean, just, kind of kidding there, but it's impossible to just do it that way. So there must be ways around. This whole idea here is that the larger the companies and the larger the use cases and the technology and the whole potential is there, it will take time, because you cannot persuade a big corporation to go on a new software system easily, but then also to go on a behind scenes tech that is for them is too complex. You need to be careful with that and make sure that you're not overwhelming them. You need to prove that what you do is really good first, and the rest comes later without you needing to push. It just happens by itself, if you have enough time.
That's true, and luckily the regulatory pressure pushes the companies to solutions they need to employ, like in invoicing or ESG and all the things we talked about.
Right. Let's zoom out again for a moment and look at the bigger architectural question, centralized versus decentralized systems. In a world that is clearly moving towards more centralized state systems like mandatory e-invoicing, why does decentralization still make sense?
I mean, I'm great at giving generic answers. Picture answers. So I think decentralized technology is a great way, as we already said, to build a system that you can really prove. You always have a problem with the centralized system that it's not really tamper-proof. It's hard to prove that a centralized system wasn't played around with, and you have to trust this big centralized company or entity, whatever. So I think blockchain has proved that a decentralized technology can achieve things that even a centralized technology cannot. So for me, it's very natural that it's the solution to build systems for proving something or enabling trust.
In a way, yes. I would say trust is exactly what you just said. It's all and 100% only about trust, and the only way to build that trust is decentralized. There's no way to build real trust with a centralized system. I mean, you may be lucky and it's trustable, and of course a lot of centralized systems are trustable, but the only way to make absolutely sure that it's trustable is a decentralized solution.
I'd also like to add, it's not only about centralized versus decentralized. What happened in the last, let's say, 12 months is also that there's a shift between human actions that can build trust and perhaps agent-built technology. So in the beginning of Unibright, it was always like humans working together in different enterprises using SAP or other ERP systems. And then the blockchain layer came as the technological stuff, decentralized, to add trust between this interaction. Now it's somehow the other way around. I mean, you have, or you will have in the very near future, a lot of agent build systems that do everything quite fast and quite automated and most probably quite centralized in terms of the AI providers that are there. So suddenly you have a very important and way more important than before layer of human trust execution that you need to prove if all the automated things are actually done the right way. And even if it's not proving like every single transaction, perhaps you should prove like every fifth or every 10th or every 20th transaction at least, and give some trust score back to that automated system. So that's also a shift that makes it very interesting for decentralized systems to support humans in evaluating and valuating the automated tasks that they will be facing more and more.
Yeah, and I think in not so far ahead in the future, we will see AI agents holding some UBT to interact with some of our systems. That's something I'm convinced of.
Which real-world synchronization problems can decentralized infrastructure solve particularly well? And where does it realistically reach its limits?
I mean, the limit question can be answered separately because limits are always like shifted. I mean, no matter if you talk about costs or transactions or throughput or data richness or something. I mean, all the limits that we have been facing in whatever technology are just
Temporary.
blown away, like like on a monthly base, perhaps. And for the possibilities, I think what I just mentioned for me is currently, at least in my mindset, the most important thing to bring back a little bit of the already distributed human interactions, interaction between humans on enterprise levels, to give them a support on a technical and a platform level. Humans are decentralized per definition, so why not build the platform in a way that it supports them the best?
To close today's AMA, I'd like to touch on governance and strategic alignment around UBT. From SPO's perspective, does the organization strategically benefit if the UBT token price increases?
Yes, it does, because as I mentioned, we are building an incentivized ecosystem with UBT being the utility token. So if we see companies using it more and we see the token price rising, then we see a stronger ecosystem. We see more people coming into it, being more incentivized to build within it. And that's the idea. So token price appreciation is something that will help the ecosystem.
And also an incentivization level for the actual users, so the enterprises that are using it, because in a credit-based system, it's always a good thing if you own these credits already before they get more expensive. And even if like the translation price can be adjusted or adapted, it will never be as fast as a price rises. It will not be like an automated one-to-one conversion, then it would make no sense. Of course, there should be a benefit for those customers that decide early enough to build credits for their future transactions. And that's also why it's good for the company and the other users if there's price action or price rising action around UBT.
What safeguards are in place to ensure that UBT remains structurally central to the infrastructure rather than drifting into something optional over time?
Us, the people sitting here, we're making sure that this will be the way it's used, as it always was intended to be. So,
and like Stefan said, it's I would say already a veteran token in this industry. So it has been around for a while. It has built a level of trust in terms of being distributed. And of course, we also know 100% that nobody can fumble around with that token. I mean, it would be kind of madness to do something new where, all of a sudden something happens with UBT. We know that nobody can change anything that shouldn't be changed.
yeah.
Perhaps if I play the bad cop, of course, these answers show that even in a decentralized system, there's still some part of centralization. In this case, it's of course the decision makers around SPO and Unibright. I mean, we always decided to build something new or to not stop and just to continue. This has also been a decision on like a daily basis that you keep up and running. So in the moment, it's still in that situation that it needs like the push of the management board or the decision makers. But in the bigger picture, it would also be a long-term goal to bring more decentralization in the token system itself. It's not about just incentivizing people to do something in a trust system and get rewarded in UBT. It also can end in making central decisions more decentralized. We also discussed this during the base ledger presentations. So that's still a goal, a midterm goal. After 8 years of Unibright, I would not just tell the exact point in time when this will be the case, but we're working towards that for sure, because it's part of the decentralization idea.
Yeah, that's totally right. Product-wise and what we are building, that's totally right. Looking at things like a decentralized autonomous organization, I was just referring more to the broader product pipeline and how we are thinking, and the way we are thinking as a bunch of people is we want to have this token central to everything we build.
Okay, I think that wraps up today's AMA. Thank you again for taking the time to share these insights, and of course to everyone who submitted questions ahead of time. As before, any unanswered questions will be carried forward to future sessions, and the goal here is always exploration and not finality. So if you're leaving today with a clearer sense of context and a few new questions, that means we're on the right track. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.